Hello, I'm Corinne Noble.
And I'm Margaret Gullick.
We're here today for the last, and I know that we said that this was going to be a 6-session one, but we reduced it to a 5-session series, and this is our last one.
Yep. And today's session is going to be about MCV reporting. This session is recommended for program managers and supervisors at MCV programs.
Okay, let's talk about what we want to accomplish in session 5. At the end of this session, you, the learner, will be able to understand the items and constructs being measured by MCV, identify the additional items or activities MCV programs must ask or perform, and know how to answer them for each family, distinguish the different types of program benchmarks and be able to determine what is needed to meet each item, and monitor and evaluate your program's performance on the MCV benchmarks through CHSR's reports.
MCV stands for Maternal, Infant, and Early Childhood Home Visiting. This program is a part of the Health Resources and Services Administration, or HRSA, within the Department of Health and Human Services. MCV funds are federal monies given to existing home visiting networks, including Healthy Families New York. In some cases, we've expanded existing programs to be able to serve more families. In others, we've opened new programs. MCV's goals, or the ultimate outcomes they're aiming for, are to improve maternal health and well-being and support optimal child development for all families, but especially for those served by funded programs.
MCV funds come with extra reporting requirements. The federal government wants to know how we're spending this money. In some cases, MCV programs must answer additional questions about all of their participants. In others, CHSR pulls information already part of the Healthy Families New York forms in the MIS to make new reports to send to the Department of Health. This webinar will focus on what these additional reporting requirements are and how we measure program performance using this information.
When a program receives MCV funds, they must determine how they'll allocate those monies across their staff. MCV funding typically does not cover all of a program's expenses. Some programs choose to have a few workers will be paid for by MCV money, while others have many workers where half of their salary comes from MCV. We only need to report on the work paid for by these funds. The annual MCV reports usually do not include an entire program. Currently, MCV reporting is on families whose first home visitor was supported by MCV funds for at least 0.25 FTEs. We followed these families even if they later change home visitors. This practice allows us to keep consistent cohorts between reporting periods. However, MCV-related changes in practice are expected to be implemented across the full program to keep everything consistent internally. So if a family starts with a MCV-funded home visitor but later changes to a non-MCV funded one, we want the services and programming they're receiving to be the same.
Workers at MCV programs must answer several additional demographic questions, for example. We start with that at intake, follow-up, and on the home visit log. We'll go through these later, but then CHSR pulls the information from these items for annual reporting. We want to note that we also report on the number of clients who are missing this information or for whom these items are left blank. So it's very important to make sure that you understand that everything must be filled in to the best of your abilities.
On the intake form, MCV programs have a few additional questions to answer. These items are under the MCV tab. First, MCV programs need to answer 2 items about PC1's ethnicity and race. Notably, these items ask about ethnicity and race separately, which is different from our standard item where the 2 factors are asked together. So MCV participants can respond that they are Hispanic or Latina and Black or African American. Second, MCV programs must also report PC1's living situation in 3A and 3B, whether PC1 perceives that he or she has low student achievement, whether any of the children in the household have low student achievement, whether any of the children in the household have developmental delays or disabilities, and whether anyone is a member of the U.S. Armed Forces.
At every home visit, workers at McVie programs must answer 3 additional questions that you can see now on the slide. Again, these items are under the McVie tab on the home visit log form. Workers must report how often PC1 reports that family members read, tell stories, or sing to TC, whether the target child is always placed to sleep on their back, and whether TC is always placed to sleep without bed sharing or soft bedding. The 2 questions about safe sleep only need to be answered until TC is 12 months old. They will automatically disappear from the form when the visit date indicates that TC is older than a year. We suggest that workers and their supervisors come up with ways of inquiring about these items without sounding too repetitive.
And at follow-up, McVie workers must re-answer several items from intake to determine if the family situation has changed. But there are 3 new items at this point. Workers must report on whether PC1 had continuous health insurance over the past 6 months, whether they completed the home or Cheers check-in at this follow-up, and what TC's usual source of medical and dental care are. Pay special attention to the continuity of insurance question. It's actually asking whether there was a time in the last 6 months that PC1 was not covered by health insurance. As such, answering no means that there were no times when PC1 was not covered, so they did have continuous coverage over the past 6 months. Answering yes means that there were times when PC1 was not covered.
All Healthy Family programs in New York now will have to answer or complete the Cheers check-in at each follow-up visit, not just McVie programs. This item, as you can see on the slide, will probably move to a different tab, and since everybody will have to answer it or do it. So we let you know where it ends up being at another time, or when we decide, actually. Let's do a quick knowledge check now, see whether you're paying attention or not. On what forms must McVie programs answer some additional questions? Please pause the video to write down your answers, and we'll go over them at the end of the video.
The other half of McVie reporting is the benchmarks, or the Federal Performance and System Outcomes. For these items, CHSR pulls information from the MIS on the back end to complete this reporting. So you don't have to answer any additional questions for these items, but everyone should know what we're reporting on. These reports are run on a quarterly and on an annual basis.
There are 19 benchmarks. Each centers around a specific construct, and we'll go through exactly what each measure does in a few minutes. These benchmarks fall into 6 domains, reflecting the goals of McVie. Those are improvements in maternal, newborn, and child health, prevention of child injuries, child abuse, neglect, or maltreatment, and reductions of ER visits, improvement in school readiness, child academic achievement, reductions in crime or domestic violence, improvement in family economic self-sufficiency, and improvements in the coordination and referrals for other community resources and supports. You don't have to remember these domains specifically, but they may help you think about what these items are trying to measure.
as of now, there are no formal targets for programs to aim for, though it's likely that some growth or improvement from year to year will be expected. However, we do expect that programs will show high completion rates on the referral and screening items that reflect their activities. And we expect relatively little missing data. These items should be answered, not skipped, for all participants. Now let's go through each benchmark. We'll first define each item, giving the McPhee definition. Then we'll note who makes up the relevant group for reporting. Who's our cohort? Is it all children? Is it all children between 6 and 12 months of age at the end of the reporting period, etc.? And then we'll note how we identify the cases in this cohort who meet the measure. This will be our numerator. In our final reports, these are always reported as numerator over denominator, percent meeting, and the number missing. So this way, we can show how big the relevant group was. Is it 500 people? Is it 10 people? And the rate at which families met the standard. There's a big difference between 10 out of 10 and 10 out of 500 meeting. We also report the number of families who are part of the denominator but are missing this information. So for example, if the question was left blank, we don't know what happened with them. They won't count towards meeting the measure, so they aren't part of the numerator, but they are still part of the denominator. We're just specifically calling out how often we don't have this information. All right, let's begin.
So the first one is preterm birth. The definition for here is the percentage of infants among mothers who enrolled in home visiting prenatally, that is before 37 weeks, who are born preterm following the program enrollment. Note that the lower number is better. The denominator then is the number of children born in the period, TCs from mothers enrolled before 37 weeks or any other children, and the numerator, the one that we're trying to get as low as possible, is number of children born in a period who were premature.
The second item looks at breastfeeding at 6 months. This is defined as the percentage of infants among mothers who enrolled in home visiting prenatally who were breastfed any amount at 6 months of age. So our denominator here is the number of children who are aged 6 to 12 months at the end of the period who've had a 6-month follow-up visit who were enrolled prenatally. And our numerator is the number of those children breastfed at any amount at the 6-month follow-up visit. So this is the follow-up form, time breastfed item, at least 6 months.
The next one is depression screening. And here we're looking at the percentage of primary caregivers enrolled in home visiting who are screened for depression using a validated tool within 3 months of enrollment for those not enrolled prenatally, that is postnatally, or within 3 months of delivery for those enrolled prenatally. The denominator here is the number of PC1s enrolled prenatally and still enrolled 3 months post-delivery, and the number of PC1s enrolled postnatally and still enrolled 3 months post-intake. Our numerator is going to be the number of PC1s enrolled prenatally screened for depression within 3 months of birth, and that is the PHQ-9 administered with the TCID form, and the number of PC1s enrolled postnatally screened for depression within 3 months of enrollment, and the PHQ-9 was administered with the intake form.
The fourth item looks at well child visits. This is the percentage of children enrolled in home visiting who received the last recommended visit based on the American Academy of Pediatrics schedule. Our denominator is the number of target children enrolled at the site who were between 3 days and 54 months old at the end of the period. Our numerator is the number of children enrolled who are at least 3 days old who received their last well-child visit by the last home visit date. So for example, if TC is 12 days old at the last home visit of the period, the last recommended well visit was expected between 3 and 7 days. So did target child receive a well child visit between 3 and 7 days of age?
The fifth one is postpartum care. And this is the percentage of mothers enrolled in home visiting prenatally or within 30 days after delivery who received a postpartum visit with a healthcare provider within 8 weeks. That is 56 days of delivery. The denominator is the number of biomom PC1s enrolled prenatally and still enrolled 56 days post-delivery, plus the number of PC1s enrolled within 30 days after the birth and still enrolled 56 days post-delivery. Our numerator in this case is going to be the number of biomom PC1s who received postpartum visit within those 56 days of delivery.
The sixth item looks at tobacco cessation referrals. This is the percent of primary caregivers enrolled in home visiting who reported using tobacco or cigarettes at enrollment and were referred to tobacco cessation counseling or services within 3 months of enrollment. Our denominator is the number of PC1s who used tobacco at enrollment and who have been enrolled at least 3 months at the end of the period. So this is taking from the parent survey, looking at PC1 current issues, smoking. The numerator is the number of PC1s who were referred to tobacco cessation services within 3 months of their enrollment. The next item looks at safe sleep. This is the percent of infants who are enrolled in home visiting that are always placed to sleep on their backs without bed sharing or soft bedding. Our denominator here is the number of target children who are 0 to 12 months old at the end of the reporting period. Our numerator is the number of target children reported to always be placed to sleep on their back and to sleep without bed sharing at the last home visit in the period. So we find the last home visit in the period. For these two items, was the answer 1 or always for both?
The eighth item is child injury. The definition for this is the rate, or it's looking at the rate of injury-related visits to the emergency department since enrollment among enrolled children. Again, note that lower number is better for this one. So the denominator is the number of TCs active at the end of the period, and the numerator would be the number of ER visits in the period. And we find these at the TC medical form ED visit item. It's medical reason number 17. So.
The ninth item looks at child maltreatment. This is the percent of children enrolled in home visiting with at least one investigated case of maltreatment following enrollment within the reporting period. And again, note that a lower percent or a lower number is going to be better here. Our denominator is the number of target children active at the end of the period. And our numerator actually comes from OCFS CPS data. So this is the only item where OCFS pulls information instead of CHSR. Again, you don't have to do anything different for this item. You don't have to answer any additional questions. But the numerator for this comes from OCFS. The 10th item looks at parent-child interaction. This is the percent of primary caregivers enrolled in home visiting who received an observation of caregiver-child interaction by the home visitor using a validated tool. Our denominator is the number of PC1s with children ages 6 to 60 months at the end of the period. Our numerator is the number of PC1s who underwent the home or Cheers check-in assessment at the last follow-up in the period. So again, this is on the follow-up form. Either the home or the Cheers check-in will count for this item.
Number 11, and we're getting close. We're getting close to the end of it. Early language and literacy activities. This is the percentage of children enrolled in home visiting with a family member who reported that during a typical week, she or he read, told stories, or sang songs with their child daily, every day. So the denominator is the number of TCs active at the end of the period, and the numerator is going to be the number of TCs where a family member reported doing language activities with the child every day at the last home visit in the period. Example, you find the last home visit in the period. Was this item answered yes and every day?
Number 12 looks at developmental screening. This is the percent of children enrolled in home visiting with a timely screen for developmental delays using a validated parent-completed tool. Our denominator is the number of target children aged 9 to 30 months at the end of the period. Our numerator is the number of TCs who had at least one age-appropriate, so in-window, ASQ in the reporting period.
Next is behavioral concerns, the percentage of home visits where primary caregivers were asked if they have any concerns regarding their child's development, behavior, or learning. Denominator here will be the number of home visits in that period, the total number, and the numerator, the number of home visits within the period where PC1 was asked if they had any developmental concerns, and this is something that, as we said, in every home visit, so you're going to find it in the home visit log.
Number 14 looks at intimate partner violence screenings. This is the percentage of caregivers enrolled in home visiting who are screened for intimate partner violence, IPV, using a validated tool. So our denominator is the number of PC1s enrolled at least 6 months at the end of the period, and our numerator is the number of those PC1s enrolled at least 6 months who completed the HITS questionnaire within 6 months of intake.
Next, we have primary caregiver education, and this is the percentage of primary caregivers who enrolled in home visiting without a high school degree or equivalent, who subsequently enrolled in and maintained continuous enrollment in or completed high school or the equivalent during their participation in home visiting. So the denominator is going to be the number of PC1s who at intake had not completed high school or obtained a GED, and you can find that on the intake form. PC1 question number 8 asks about the highest grade completed, and the numerator is going to be the number of PC1s who enrolled in or maintained enrollment in or completed high school or the GED after enrollment. And we're going to find this in the follow-up when they answer the highest grade completed, at least high school, GED, or if they enrolled in high school or GED educational program.
The next item uses that continuity of insurance coverage question. So this is the number or the percentage of primary caregivers enrolled in home visiting who had continuous health insurance coverage for at least 6 consecutive months. Our denominator is the number of PC1s who are enrolled for at least 6 months at the end of the period, and our numerator is the number of PC1s who reported that there were not any times in the last 6 months that they did not have health insurance coverage at the last follow-up in the period. Number 17 looks at completed depression referrals. So this is the percent of primary caregivers referred to services for a positive screen for depression who received one or more service contacts. So did they get a referral? Our denominator is the number of PC1s who had a positive depression screen within 3 months, so their PHQ is positive, and were referred for services related to the items that came up on the PHQ-9. Our numerator is the number of PC1s who received services. So this ties back to our third item. Of your PC1s who screened positive for depression, how many of them actually got the services they needed?
Number 18 is completed developmental referrals. This is the percentage of children enrolled in home visiting with positive screens for developmental delays measured using a validated tool who received services in a timely manner. The denominator is the number of target children with positive screens for developmental delays, any ASQ area under cutoff, and the numerator is going to be the number of target children needing developmental services who received services from home visiting or were referred to an EIS and received evaluation within 45 days or received another community service within 30 days. So this ties back to number 12 of those who screened positive for a developmental delay. Did they get or receive services?
And finally, number 19, our last benchmark. This is IPV referrals. So this is the percentage of primary caregivers enrolled in home visiting with positive screens for IPV, measured using a validated tool, who received referral information to IPV resources. So our denominator is the number of PC1s with positive HITS screenings, and our numerator is, of those PC1s with positive screenings, the number who were referred for IPV services. So again, this ties back to that screening item. Of those who screened positive, did they at least get a referral for IPV-related services?
Okay, done. We went through the 19. Yay!
Excellent.
As you probably noticed, programs definitely have more influence over some of these items than others. And indeed, the feds seem to recognize that not all of these items are directly under programs' control. They classify the benchmarks into two categories: the performance indicator items and the system outcomes.
Most items are considered to be performance indicators. These items are relatively closely tied to the home visiting intervention or have been shown to be sensitive to home visiting. So many of these items reflect whether a family receives a referral for services or is screened for certain needs. So for example, we track whether families who report using tobacco at intake receive a referral for tobacco cessation services within 3 months of enrollment, and whether TCs receive their regular required ASQs. These benchmarks are directly related to program practice. Some items focus on whether families utilize referred services or implement good practices. So for example, we track whether sleep habits and whether TCs receive well baby visits. Home visiting may help families develop healthy habits and be more likely to meet these goals, but of course, individual families may choose to do otherwise, even with the support of a home visitor. You can see the list of items that are performance indicators here.
The remaining items are systems outcomes. These items are less sensitive to change due to home visiting alone, but may be impacted by factors from many systems. In these cases, we can assume the federal government is interested in knowing about the incidence of these issues in the population it's serving. For example, we track and report on the rate of preterm birth among enrolled families, but we know that programs do not have all that much control over this incidence. Similarly, programs do not have all that much control over whether families maintain continuous health insurance or not. However, programs do have more influence over whether these items are answered or left blank. So remember to collect full information from your participants and enter it to the MIS.
Here's a summary of all of the 19 benchmarks classified by their domain and the item type.
I love this graph. Great job, Margaret.
Thank you. All right, let's do a quick knowledge check. What's the difference between performance indicator items and system outcomes items? And try to name at least one benchmark that falls into each category. You can pause the video to write down your answer.
So now it's time to go over your answers. So the first knowledge check asked on what forms McVie programs must answer additional items about their families. These forms are the intake form, home visit log, and follow-up form. Hope you got that right.
And the second knowledge check asked about the difference between performance indicator items and systems outcome items. So performance indicators are items that are more closely tied to home visiting interventions or shown to be particularly sensitive to home visiting. So these are related to parent activities or to program activities like referrals or screenings, family utilization of services, and parenting practices. And then our systems outcomes might be less sensitive to change from home visiting alone, but they might be impacted by it. So we're reporting on incidents in your population, but we know that programs have less control. And here are the benchmarks that fall within each category. You can see if you got one in each of them.
Okay, thank you so much for completing session 5. Remember that there's always help if you need it. You can contact us, call the helpline, which is 518-591-8610.
And you can also submit a support ticket on the MIS homepage if you have any questions about these items in the forms or how we end up using them for these reports. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.